Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mighty Podcast, where we're all about empowering kids and teens to manage their thoughts and emotions. That's what Mighty stands for. Today we have the lovely Ramita from Elevate here. She's going to be talking to us all about Elevate and what it is that she's doing to inspire and encourage teen girls. So, welcome, Ramita. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
It's lovely, lovely to have you. So, can you tell us a bit? Let's hear your story. Tell us a bit about you. I know you're a teacher. You are a mum. You're also an author. You run your own podcasts. So, tell us
Yeah.
about how Elevate started,
Yeah.
and yeah, what you're doing with it.
Sure. How long have you got?
Oh my goodness. As
No,
long as you like.
I'll try and give you a very streamlined version and a blinkist, very example of how I ended up where I am today. So, like most things in life, you never really know which route is going to take you where. I have studied sciences throughout, and at one point thought I might go into medicine.
Mm,
Actually, ended up in teaching. I've loved teaching. I've been in it for almost 2 decades now, which really ages me. But there was a
mm,
crossroads when, and as all young teenagers or any young people or young families that are going through change can relate to, we
yeah.
had an unexpected move, not really planned for, to Asia about 2019. My husband left in 2018, yeah, through my husband's work. And it was at that point that I decided that I might take a break from teaching and think about what it is that I really want to do for the next chapter of my life. I could go back into schools in Asia and work in schools there, which was a very wonderful opportunity. If I pursued it, I knew I wouldn't regret it. But I think there is something inside of me that always knew that I wanted to do something with what I've gained from teaching that might
Mm,
help kids from a different angle.
yeah.
And I couldn't quite place my finger on it, didn't know what I was going to do, whether that was volunteering or charity work or setting something up for myself.
Yeah.
And actually got in touch with a wonderful coach myself. So I kind of went through that whole route of trying to work out what it is that would make me happiest. And Elevate was really a result of that and thinking about all the things that you just said, being a mum,
Mm,
having my experiences in schools, seeing what I learned from my students, because I do think they're wonderful teachers, and also
mm,
reflecting back on what it was like for me as a teenage girl, which I have to say was a little bit turbulent. I was 13 when my mum passed away due to an illness. And I was the eldest of three siblings growing up in as a first generation Canadian um, in Vancouver. And it was tricky. My dad didn't really have the tools or the means probably to help us work out the emotions we were going through as a young
yeah.
family. And I don't know if it was only when I became a mum or if it was when I had this moment in time to think, really reflect back on my teenage years and thought that actually those years are so crucial for young people. And
Mm,
the more parents I was talking to within the work I was doing as a teacher in education, I worked in sort of junior school. I think in Canada we have what we call middle years, and I
mm,
specialized in middle years. So I've always stayed in key stage two, which is kind of
mm,
the ages of 8 and 11
mm,
in the UK. But I was trained really 9 to 13, and
mm,
I mean, there's just so much that happens between those years to a child's mental makeup, and their physical development changes so vastly. And then, of course, the academic side of it all changes because you're going from junior school to middle school to senior school, or junior school here to straight to senior school at 11, and
mm,
that can be such a like there's just a lot of there's almost like a perfect storm brewing there for
yeah.
a lot of eruption. And I wondered what it was as adults and educators and maybe even parents that was lacking in helping our kids go from that childlike thing and getting into teen years. And those tween years, I think, is where I'm
Mm,
most passionately thinking about how I can help those kids preventatively feel ready, validated, set up for what's coming next. And I wish I'd maybe, I think my mom might have had the foresight a little bit to give us a bit of that because she knew she was ill and maybe didn't know how long she had. But I don't know. I wonder sometimes if life would have been different for me if we had some of the tools that we now know make such a difference to young people's lives and journeys and ability to deal with setback. So Elevate was born out of, long story, sorry, I've gone on for too long, but Elevate was born out of thinking about what 5 elements of a child's makeup would I love to give them? What could I, as a teacher, as a parent myself, really make sure that my child or my student feels that they've got these skills, and if they've got this, anything is possible. And how can I
Yes.
make them feel like superheroed people? And for me, those 5 elements were building the confidence, then the resilience, understanding other people with empathy, understanding emotions with emotional intelligence, and really focusing on raising kids that value EQ over IQ, and
Yes.
then ultimately kindness, and how we can spread kindness to others, but how do we show kindness to ourselves? Because we are sometimes our worst critics, particularly girls. So
Most definitely.
so that's really what the genesis of Elevate was, and it started as a one-to-one mentoring program, which I still do, and it's grown over the last 4 years from working in 3 different facets. So I do the one-to-one mentoring with clients in my office, but or Zoom if you're international, and then I have partnered with schools, and I work with them on their mental well-being and mental fitness programs, and I try and help kids on friendships and things like that. And I also then run webinars and workshops for adults and organizations, parents.
Wow, wow, wow. That's
Yeah.
such an inspiring story.
Oh,
And
thanks,
I,
Emma.
yeah, and emotional. It's very sad to hear that you lost your mum at such a young age.
Mm,
And would you say like at the time, because I don't know how old you are, Ramita. I'm 47, 46, not 47,
mm,
40, just turned 46 in June. Um, and yeah, I recognized exactly what you were saying. I could really relate to it around that sort of emotional support. I was raised by my dad, um,
okay.
and I really felt like I missed out on the having the emotional support. My dad was always at work. I was the
Yeah.
eldest of me and my brother, so I was sort of there looking after him when my dad was out working. And it really resonates with me when you talk about that the fact that, as teenagers, and it was through those years, if you're missing on that, if you're not in touch with your emotions, or something I would always do is probably sort of suppress them or just push them to one side because I didn't really know how to deal with them. And a lot of what you're saying with regards to the 5 elements, all of these things that you're trying to encourage in teens are actually a lot of the things that we now need as adults,
Yeah.
that maybe we didn't get as teens. Hence the reason, if we're not addressing it and we're not aware of it, we can't change it.
No, exactly. And I know, I think some of us are naturally born with some levels of empathy, or
Mm,
possibly we have a better disposition to deal with setbacks, or maybe our resilience skills are might be stronger than others.
mm,
But that's not a given. And actually, when you look at some of the leadership roles or the things that adults need in successful careers, whatever you want to call successful, I'll put
yes,
that in quotes. But the kind of remit suggests that you need to be resilient and you need to be an
yes,
empathetic leader. And yet, I don't know where we're teaching any of that. So
no,
you might have it innately and you might learn it through time and experience, but actually if those are the qualities we now know make a very successful and popular leader, then why are we
mm,
not giving those skills to kids in their most
mm,
crucial time of development? So
yes,
that's the question I kept asking myself, and I thought, right, that's what I'm going to do then. I'm going to develop a
yeah,
program where I have a teacher. I know I am a teacher. I have taught for many years. I know how to write a lesson plan. I
yes,
know what my objective is. So I put together this, 8-week program where we look at each of those superpowers or those elements, those 5 pillars,
yes.
and take a real deep dive in helping kids understand that's the terminology, understand the skills, look at examples of other case studies of people around us that can we can learn from.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And how are you encouraging them to adopt these elements? What are they doing in order to, achieve the sort of the self-belief or the confidence or the empathy?
Yeah, I mean, a wide range of activities. It always depends on the child and their level of engagement, or what willingness to want to do different. Once you know the particular tween or teen girl you're working with, you can kind of, well, having the experience of teaching, you can think a little bit. So the bespoke program is already designed and the books are already printed and everything, but I make it quite unique to the child I'm working with. So if the
Okay.
child happens to be really good at drama and loves and enjoys it, or actually isn't very good at drama, but is one of her goals is to maybe do a bit more public speaking, I
Yes.
might do a lot more role play with her in
Okay.
my one-to-one, and we act out scenarios.
Okay.
But and with the younger ones, I'm a little bit careful about how much I throw at them in terms of the science behind it. But the
Yes.
older girls, we start from a real premise around neurology. What is your brain doing for you? What is
Yeah.
that organ that we have inside that head of ours really capable of? And do we
Yeah.
understand it? Do we understand what it can do for us and what it's happening to us? So I'm pretty, because I'm so passionate and I want more girls in science and STEM subjects anyway, I
Yeah.
really try to take a scientist's approach to this. Also, because I think at that stage, teen girls are pretty skeptical anyway, and they should be. I
Yes.
don't think you can give them just the odd kind of, a magic wand routine that you might be able to when they were little. So I do think that when you give them concrete evidence and science, and you treat them like you really want their buy-in and respect them like people who have their own
Yes.
minds,
Yes.
um, and I think that immediately, that shift between week one when they arrive and they're a bit skeptical and they're like, what is she on about? To then, bringing down the models of the brain, pulling apart the brain, looking at the different
Yeah.
organs, part of the brains that are developing in their actual developmental stage of growth. Because as we know, the teen brain is totally being reconstructed. So I give them a
Yes.
lot of background. And I think once you get that and you start to really give them relatable people to study, so people that are in the media like Simone Biles and Taylor
Yes.
Swift and
Yeah.
Greta Thunberg, for example, are people that have achieved things with zero belief in the beginning. They didn't have
Yes.
that self-confidence, and they were not the most celebrity. They weren't celebrity children. They weren't born
No.
into fame, but something about their gift and their self-belief really transmitted through, and they're now superstars. But not that you have to be a worldwide superstar, but you be the best you can be, and show up
Yeah.
as the best version of you is all we can ever, as parents or teachers, ever ask of our kids, really.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so
Yeah.
relatable. And everything we're doing for Mighty, manage your thoughts and emotions, this is exactly it.
Mm.
You're completely talking our language. It's lovely.
Yeah.
And when you talk about tweens, even though I
Mm.
understand where you're coming from, you're talking about that age that's sort of just before they're hitting teenager. So you're sort of
Yes.
talking about 10 and 11, that sort of age group. Or that,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. They're still want hugs and cuddles from mum and dad every now and then, or whoever's looking after them. But at the
yes,
same time, really think they're growing up and should be allowed to have their own devices and their own apps on
yes,
social media. So yeah, it's those
yeah.
tween years where they're swinging, and then that pendulum somewhere. They're trying to work out their own little identities, and they're desperate to be older, but know that they still need a bit of comfort from home as well.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. So I've got three girls, and my eldest is 40, she's just turned 15.
Oh,
And
mm.
Elsie is that child. She's 12, she'll be 13 next year. Um, and I'm really seeing it, it really changes once they start senior school. I feel just because of the people that are around them, they're looking up to other people, they're witnessing things, they're hearing things that they wouldn't have witnessed or heard at junior school. And it's quite challenging to navigate that as a parent if you're not, I think, as a parent, maybe as self-aware as you could be,
Yeah.
because we're a product of a product, aren't we, to a certain degree. And if we're not able to manage our emotions and understand our thoughts and understand our own makeup, it's very difficult to encourage and help our children to do the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. Often, and this is not a joke, I do get lots of parents who I meet at the end of a session, and when I give the feedback or I explain the lesson that we covered in the session in the time that their daughter was with me, so many mums will say, I think I need to sit in on these lessons myself. Like,
Yes.
I don't know if I've got this, or I wish I had this when I was, younger. And I do believe that was true for me too. I do
Yes.
think that uh, being a teacher and being a parent is such a privilege, but it's also the biggest learning curve ever
Yes.
into learning about how you undo what happened to you, kind of
Yes.
as a kid.
Yes. Yes. It's
Yeah,
hard.
it's
And it
hard.
takes a
It's
lot
really
of
hard.
time, doesn't it?
Yeah, you need to be able to sit with your thoughts, sit with those emotions that you talk
Mm.
about. And as you rightly said right at the beginning, it's so much easier, and our brain naturally wants to do the thing that's easiest, is to bury those feelings or suppress
Yes.
those thoughts, because dealing with them or having them at the front of your mind is so much harder. And if we don't teach our girls now, then they also carry this as they grow older, and this idea around perfectionism and I'm not good enough, and all their
Mm.
self-worth dropping as they get older, just really catapults, and it's quite dangerous territory from what I've seen. So I really encourage parents and teachers to allow kids to feel the feels, whatever they are, and
Yeah.
never discount them.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you seeing? Because it's just girls that you work with, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
really carved this out for girls. I'm very passionate about girls in education and girls achieving their best. I do feel that girls' self-confidence um, is something that just goes from, the most confident girls I used to work with in junior school would go off into senior schools, and their parents would, run it, because we live in a sort of villagey area. You run
Mm.
into parents and you still see the parents you worked with when they were little, and the sort of stories you heard were heartbreaking about how
Mm.
much that child has changed and how much they've dropped in their self-belief, and how much they don't try new things and want to take risks or ever put their hand up, or they've really retreated into themselves.
Mm.
And I think we haven't really thought enough. I think what happens as a society is we think reactively.
Yes.
Once a problem hits us, we think, okay, what can we
Yes.
do to fix this? We're very solution
Yeah.
orientated,
Yes.
which makes
Yes.
sense. That that is very important, and we need to look for solutions. But I think what we haven't done with education is really thought about how can we be preventative to avoid
Yes.
these situations, and what
Mm.
can I give my kids, and what can I teach my students
Mm.
to arm them before
Yes.
they face anything that could be something that might allow their self-worth to plummet.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it is the preventative, isn't it? And it's the tools. And I suppose looking back, and again, you'd probably be able to relate to this, but I think looking back as a teenager myself, having if you had your tools, and I imagine it like like your backpack, if you've got your backpack on, whereby something comes up and you can dip into that backpack and pick something out, pick out a tool that's going to help you overcome that situation. You're just building that personal resilience, aren't you, through as you go throughout life. um
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, a few people have said to me, because my girls are, that they're confident girls. They all have we all have our dips, don't we? But they're confident girls. And I've had conversations with people where, someone may have come along and said, oh, it's okay for you, or, they seem to be so stable. And I'm like, well, not really, because it's like everything. I imagine life's a bit like a heartbeat. We have these ups and downs all of the time, these peaks and troughs, and we never know when the troughs are coming.
Mm.
So you're completely right. If we can create something and kids have got the ability to um, deal with the struggles as they arise, they've got their backpack on, they've got their toolkit, then that's gonna, create such a thriving world as,
Yeah.
throughout the ages.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. I think, as you say, I mean, you're in the thick of it with three girls. I'm sure you've
Mm,
got your hands full, and I'm pleased to hear you say that they go through life with good confidence in themselves. But like you say, you don't know um when they might be faced with something that's
mm,
life is so unpredictable. The only constant in life is change, And I
Mm.
think even if they do, if you can't see that there's a problem coming at your child's way now, what you're doing is planting a seed. You're really allowing them to gain access to a side of their brain that they can reach for
Yes.
when that opportunity comes, or when, and it's not that they're not going to need an adult then, or they're not going to need their parent or another adult to help them get through this. They obviously
Mm.
will, but I think the time it takes to bounce back will be
Mm.
so much quicker. And I don't
Yes.
ever negate that you shouldn't feel or you shouldn't experience hardship. I think that is such an important part of growing up. So I also have an issue with parents that try and sort of sugarcoat everything or cover them in cotton wool and try and make
Yeah.
sure that they never face anything challenging. I'm not an advocate of that at all, but I do think that we have to allow our children to have opportunities where they do fail, but fail safely, in order to
Mm.
make them understand that life is going to be, as you say, full of these peaks and troughs. And when you're in that trough, at the first time, it might feel like you're at a really low bowl, a part of that trough. It's so far down,
Yeah.
you know, if the equilibrium is up here. But actually, by the time you've gone through a second time, your brain, your mind will remember what it was like and tell you, hey, you've been through something hard
You
before.
can
You
do
can do
this.
it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that message is so powerful for
Yes.
young people, I mean for adults, to remind themselves about that
Yes.
you have done hard things and you can do
Yes.
more hard things. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. How do you see technology? Because this is something I come up against with my girls, with
Mm,
being on their devices, and it's my middle daughter who's more so, very much into, she wants to be on her iPad a lot. She would, if I gave them to her and she was allowed to be on them 24/7, she would be on them 24/7.
mm.
Um, so how do you see, like, I suppose the speed at which technology is moving, but all of these sort of social media apps and things that they tend to start engaging with at senior school. So my girls got their phones when they started senior school. Um, but with that comes, so and so's on Snapchat, I'd like to be on Snapchat, or so and so's on this app, I'd like to be on this one. And it's trying to navigate that, um, when I suppose as an adult, we've had the experience and we know how much of a struggle, and how negative some of these social media apps can be.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so important across the world. It's a global phenomenon,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
you're mentioning. So it's not a
yeah.
problem that is specific to us in England. All teens are worldwide and all parents
Mm.
worldwide. They're the first generation of kids we're raising in this age, in this digital modern world. And it's
Mm.
really different and it's quite scary. At the
Mm.
same time, we understand um, that there are benefits to the technology side of
Mm.
life. So there is lots happening, and as you guys know in your company, that you
Mm.
can use technology for to help kids and learn from and engage with, that will really enhance their educational experience. So
Mm.
there's definitely good things to be said about technology. But the secret again lies in that big word balance. And how do you get
Yes.
that balance? I do believe that you are now, and your daughter might be on the cusp of it, your middle one. I do think the tide is turning, and I think your parents are probably at a very welcome stage of support with this, because I think what was happening up until now, at least from my point of view, working in schools and being a mum, it was parents thinking it's schools help, we need help because teenage kids are not listening to parents, and we need you to give us some guidance here. Parents saying this is an issue that schools were saying this is an issue parents have to have more control of at their home. But the sort of idea around being the only, so the more children that were getting these accesses to these devices, and
Mm.
you being the minority being left out, that exclusion, and
Mm.
because every family will have their own moral compass and everyone will have different ideas of what age is appropriate, and obviously not offering any judgment on it, but we know that it's not safe for our kids to be on these
Yes.
things unsupervised or unmonitored. We're all busy working parents. How
Yes.
do you manage the supervision of that?
Yeah.
And yes, over time, we've seen ways where parental controls can be bigger or better, or passwords can be set. And all of that has been great. But what we haven't had is collective activism until now. And I think now that they have this smart free phone childhood company, I don't know if your listeners already know about this, because it is absolutely game changing in terms of how quickly this momentum has picked up and how many schools and governments around the world are signing up to this platform and asking for support with each other, because it's like you say, you might say, well, darling, for you, I don't feel this is right, but all of her friends are discussing something or a joke on this one app, and she goes into the school next day and has no idea what the joke is about or what the meme was that was shared because she wasn't allowed access to it. It makes them feel awful, and it's difficult. It's a really hard thing to watch your child feel like they are being excluded in any form at all. And so this, I think this is a really dangerous territory, because I obviously, my whole ethos is inclusivity. But how do you make everybody feel included if different families have different rules on what's appropriate and what's not appropriate? And you can't choose your children's friends in senior school. You can sort of orchestrate that a little bit when they're little, but you don't know who they're going to want to gravitate towards when they're in senior school and what they're exposed to. So this is where the danger lies. And I think you don't know who else is out there. So it is dangerous and it is worrying. But I do think, like everything else, if we're teaching our young people to grow up into adults, if their whole teen years is about learning to mess up so that you can hopefully be empowered enough with the right messaging and the right tools to go out into the world at 18 and fly, then this is our time as parents to remember we are not there to be their friends and to win them over. We really have to look at the dangers that we know exist. Now we know there's enough research out there, and we know what it's happening and what it's doing to the rewiring of especially teenage brains that are already going through so much construction. So you wouldn't take your child and put them in any dangerous way outside the house. If you saw a cars or you saw something out there, you wouldn't let your kid cross the street without safety tools. The same thing is true. You wouldn't let even a little kid, you wouldn't let a little child swim without a life jacket when they're first learning how to swim. You've got to be that adult in their life that sets the boundaries and gives them those safety net measures to navigate this until they can make some sound judgments themselves.
Yes, I love the way you put that, because that's very, very relatable when you say it like that.
We all have to learn a little bit, your doggy paddling around, but it's a lot of it is, and I think it's okay for us to be honest with our kids too. I think sometimes parents are afraid to say that they are scared of the unknown and the changes that are coming. And I think if we actually say to our children, look, there's a lot of things on the internet that I'm learning about, or these apps that I haven't learned about, until we sit down and understand them fully and what you want to get out of it, we're not agreeing to this. And I understand that's frustrating, and I understand that that's really hard for you. But actually, if more parents are saying that under the collective activism, hopefully umbrella, then they won't feel so like they're being so unfairly treated, or it's so unjust.
Yes. I hear that a lot.
Yeah,
so and so doesn't do that, or so and so doesn't do that, and you're thinking, oh God, I'm doing what I think's the best thing to do. But then, like you say, you feel like that. Am I being too, harsh? But no, I can totally relate to that. So when the teenage girls or the tweens go through the program, your mentoring program, what are some of the outcomes that you see? Because that must be so inspiring to work with a child that is struggling, and then to go through this process and or go through this training. And when you talk about, even as a 46-year-old woman, when you talk about self-belief, and when you talk about confidence, and you talk about empathy and all of these things, they are life-changing. They are life-changing. So what are you seeing on the other end of it once they go through these programs with you? What are some of the girls achieving and doing?
Such a lovely question. It's such a rewarding way to look at what you're doing, because sometimes when you're in the grindy, gritty bit of work, you don't remember to think back on some of the great feedback you've had or the wonderful relationships you've built, which I've been so fortunate. I thank my lovely Elevate community for being in touch with me, staying in my DMs, sending me photos of their girls doing things that years after we finished the program. So I absolutely love those. And that's kind of my data point, my entry of knowing that something we did together has played some small role in allowing them to achieve what they didn't think they were able to before. But on a more general level, I think some of the skills we work on in terms of empathy and EQ is around particularly girls and friendships and communication, and why friendships can go bad. Sometimes they go sour, and friendships change as adults too. Of course, we all evolve as different people. And I think that whole idea around what girls have in terms of BFFs when they're in junior school, or their closest friends, and then they kind of develop new interests and find new people in senior school. And there's a sense of loss and grief and mourning of the friends that they've left. And then there's this excitement around the new friends they're developing. Sometimes they don't realize what the other people around them might be sensing. And that's been really nice. I've definitely have met some girls that have really been sort of leaders in their year groups or their classrooms about being upstanders and speaking up when something isn't right, making sure other girls feel included, spreading my kind of elevate girl power message around making sure we lift everybody else up with kindness. Otherwise, there's no point in this. So that's been really nice. Other girls who might have struggled with the 11 plus or exam anxiety, or worrying around, am I ever going to make it into the schools that my big sister has, or I'm different because I have a learning difficulty, or I get highly anxious around social situations. Those types of things are really, really rewarding when you see them, running to be school council member and making speeches in front of their friends. And the parents say to me, doesn't matter if she gets it or not, but she spoke in front of the whole year group. And that's wonderful and really exciting. Listening to girls when they talk about their worries about themselves, mostly that I'm just not going to do this because I can't, and that limiting self-belief, and how many more girls have gone for things that they originally thought they probably wouldn't have put themselves forward for. That's probably been my greatest achievement with some of the girls I've worked with. Embracing taking risks and being okay with failure. I think the biggest message I keep saying is it goes wrong, so what happens, what actually happens. Let's think of worst case scenarios, and then just rate them in the grand scheme of life. How bad are they? How bad are they? So let's take the risk and see how we can maybe try and overcome this worry you've got. So anxiety and worries, I think, are the biggest around failure.
Totally relate to that. Everything that you've said. I say to both, well, all three of my girls, even Ruby, she's only just turned 8. But when we talk about failure, again, even as an adult, we're like, we talk about it, and then we sometimes beat ourselves up around it, and it's like, oh, I could have done this, or I should have done this. But I've tried to change my own vocabulary around failure, as in its lessons. It's all just one big lesson. So if we can see everything that we're trying as, it's not gone how I wanted it to go, but I've learned from it. It's been a lesson. Is there such thing as failure? It could all just be lessons,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I met one headmistress last year who was literally taking all rubbers outside of her school, which I was applauding. She said, I'm sick and tired of kids making mistakes. They're just
rubbing it out.
All girls spending hours trying to work out the perfect way to write something, or and it starts so young. She said it starts in reception, and that really made me worry. I was like, wow, that is pretty interesting to hear. And I think you're absolutely right. I think you have to remember that that's why I look at case studies of people like Taylor Swift or Simone Biles, or you name it. Every success story has a million failed stories before that. And you've got to remember that nobody ended up where they are today without failing loads first. And from that failure, that word, again, how do you become more fearless? How do you become more, you gain greater ability? How do you bounce back and move forward for something? And those skills are really, really valuable. So if you do have an opportunity where you've had a setback, as I call them, how do you reframe it to say, this happened, but now I'm going to turn this into something where I grow. This is an opportunity. I've got two ways to look at this. I can wallow in it. And wallowing in it is probably very good too, for a few minutes or for a while, or an agreed amount of time. And then how do I say, okay, time to pick myself up now and I
Yeah.
need to learn from these experiences, and what can I do to make sure that when I do this, when I face something like this in the future, I know exactly what I can and can't do to make it better.
Yeah. Love that reflection. Hey, bit
Yeah.
of reflection, which is
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is really important. It is. And I don't know if we do. We're so busy. I mean, it's hard enough for us to stay present. We're such a
Mm,
busy society and such busy households with all the,
mm,
the idea around overscheduling our children, but we run to the next thing. We're always thinking about
mm,
the next thing. We're
mm.
always thinking about the next thing. We very rarely go back and think about things that have happened in the past. So reflection is
Mm.
exactly, as you say, such a nice thing to be able to spend some time doing.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Some
Oh, it's a
golden nuggets
pleasure.
in there. I've been scribbling lots of different things down. I loved what you said when you talking about that, learning to mess up, have
Mm,
been able to learn to mess up.
mm,
And I always say to the girls as well, and other families and stuff that we work with, if you're if you don't succeed at something, if you do fail, it shows that you're trying,
mm,
which is effort,
mm.
and commitment and all of these wonderful things that, if you do have a goal and you are heading somewhere, you need these things to be able to get yourself there.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so you
You're
can
right.
turn it around to a positive, can't you? Rather than, oh, I failed, it's not gone how I wanted it to go, and you beat yourself up like lots of people do. We can always
Yeah,
see it in a different way.
totally. And I think what we forget as parents sometimes, that the sort of antidote, or like the opposite of anxiety, comes from competence, right?
Mm,
And how do you gain competence? How do you
mm.
gain a skill? Well, it's by throwing yourself at it a million times and getting
Yes,
it wrong before you get it
yes,
right. So if we
yes.
don't give ourselves these opportunities to mess up, we don't give ourselves these chances to have it go wrong, we
Mm,
can't ever really build competence. So we're almost shooting ourselves in the foot here. You
mm.
you you don't realize that giving this short term success that you think you're giving your children by not exposing them to things that look hard,
Yes,
we're actually stopping them building their long term resilience.
growth. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. To get it right, you've got to get it wrong, haven't you, at the end of the
Yeah.
day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. Not at, hopefully not at everything, but I think you start to see what values align with your personality, what you want for your family and what you want for your kids. And I think that's really important too. I think we need to go back to that old fashioned, I mean, not obviously modern parenting is brilliant and co-parenting
Mm.
is brilliant, but what I mean is align yourself between however your household is set up with a sense of these are the values that matter to us as a family,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
family B, C, D might be doing it this way, and
Yeah.
we respect each other for that, and that's
Yeah.
totally cool. But in our family, and really let them feel that you've got empathy for them, really
Mm.
let them feel that you understand them,
Mm.
validate their feelings of frustration,
Mm.
but allow them to understand that this is what makes us us. This is what we want to identify as. We want to be those people that play more.
Mm.
We want to do board games more because we learn from those types of setbacks and failing and
Mm.
losing and sibling rivalry between
Yes.
matches and on that thing. I think what we're losing is when every child in the house has their own device, you're not even fighting over the access to who gets to control the remote to find the television program that you
Yeah.
have to buy. So
Yeah.
we develop these things as kids naturally because of the environment that we grow up in. The
Mm.
environment our children are growing up in
So
now is
different.
so different
Yeah.
that even the
Yeah.
small opportunities where you learn to sort of speak up and fight for your place in the family or whatever, we're
It's not
losing it.
happening.
No, it's
Yeah.
not happening. So we want to
Yeah.
create as many of these opportunities and really reconnect as a family and have
Mm.
as much time as you can where you're doing digital detoxing and talking and listening to each other, allowing children to really express themselves over the dinner table or while you're preparing dinner together. Find those moments because they're going to retreat more and more and more into themselves as they become older, and you're going to miss out on these opportunities. So these
Yes.
tween years are
So
so
true.
vital to get as much as you can in while they're listening and they kind of
Mm.
have you, whether that's
Mm.
walking next to them on the school run or driving with them in the car next to them, just
Yeah.
listening to their conversations, listening to them and their friends, and just letting them know that you're there, as you
Yes.
say, from the sidelines.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. So have you got any projects or anything coming up with what you're doing with Elevate? Anything new coming up?
Not well, I know nothing new at the moment. I'm going to continue to grow the work that I'm doing with families and organizations. I would love to, I've had a break from the podcast that we did for 8 seasons. While I was back working in schools last year, I just had to manage my timetable. So the podcast was the one thing I let go. But I think I'd like to get back into the podcast. So at the moment, I'm looking back at the archives and putting sound bites and clips onto our newly revamped TikTok channel, which is really exciting for me. So I'm learning about how to use, latest social media apps myself. I've been a little bit afraid of all of that, to be honest. And I'm at the other end. I've got my eldest at her final year of school. So I'm going to spend this year not chasing lots of new things so I can be present with her. When she's, So I've got that to look forward to. It's exciting, but also, another bit of change for me. So I'm kind of navigating my own emotions around losing her. It's hard to accept it when they get to that age. You can't wait when they start to being grumpy. You're in that place going, when are they going to go? And then you get to this place and you think, this is the last September of her first day of school. Oh my gosh.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So she's in her final year at school or college? At school.
At school.
Wow.
So this is her last year at home for us. We think if all goes to plan, she thinks she's going to be off to university somewhere next September. So we're October, whenever it starts. So that's what I've decided to do this year, is really spend some time focusing on a bit of family life, getting my balance right with work and the kids, and continuing to do Elevate with corporate presentations and working more with schools in partnerships to build more access around these 5 ways to build wellness and teen mental fitness, as I like to call it.
Sounds wonderful. It sounds wonderful. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, how can they do so?
You can follow us on any of the social media apps that you might be used to having already. So on Instagram, I'm at elevate.ra. TikTok is the same. LinkedIn is the same. Any head teachers or teachers that work in primary, middle school sectors, or lower school of senior school, I'd be very keen to touch base with you. I've developed a school scheme of work. I've got presentations and workshops for parents that I can certainly deliver, and work with schools on that. And then you can always DM me on anything or email me. My website is www.elevate-ra.com.
Yeah, I'll make sure I put all of the links at the bottom of the video in YouTube, and also in the notes on the podcast. But thank you so much, Ramita. That's been brilliant. It's been great to hear all about Elevate, about your passion. You're obviously hugely passionate about what you do, and that comes across, and very educational. And I love that you talk about EQ as, as not over IQ, but just it being just as important. Because I think sometimes we forget that, don't we? It's very much like in school, getting your grades, doing your exams, and we forget the other side of it. There's a whole nother side.
Yeah, and to me, it is one of the most important parts of growing up into a kind and emotionally intelligent person. It starts with them when they're younger. So if we can do that, well, we've got them in their impressionable years, and I can think we can save them a lot of heartache with the relationship building and the healthy relationships that they can form when they've got those skills
definitely
honed in on. So thank you. I love what you do as well. Thank you so much for everything, and it's so lovely. This is the beauty of being in the world space you're in. I think like-minded energy always attracts it itself, and I think it's been wonderful for us to connect and get to know what you're doing as well. I love it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, and I will catch up with you soon.
Definitely. Take care, Emma.
Cheers, Marita. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to learn more about M.Y.T.E, our M.Y.T.E program and its profound toolkit, jump over to our website and get in touch with us. We are here to support you and the children in your care.